Chapter 4: The Tricks of the Trade. I became good friends with Bunty, who was managing the treasury operations of a leading non-banking finance company of the time. One day he came up to me with an unusual request. Lala, I want you to find out what jobber M is up to in the Colgate stock. What exactly are you looking for? I asked him. He is accumulating the stock for somebody and I am keen to know how much he has bought so far. Even better if he can tell you whom he is buying for, Bunty said. M is a seasoned jobber. Why would he let me in on the secret? I asked. I am not saying he will tell you straight away, but there may be a way to get it out of him. I am willing to pay up to rupees 10,000 for the information, Bunty replied. Seems a tough task because M is quite discreet about his trades, and I have not heard of any underhand dealings by him, I said. Maybe you are right, but figure out a way if you can, Bunty said. That he was willing to pay rupees 10,000 for just information told me how crucial the information was to him. The following day, I hovered around M to sneak a peek at his soda pad. That did not work. I then tried chatting up M when he was a bit free. But M clammed up as soon as I casually mentioned Colgate. He rightly suspected that I was up to something. I did not want to play my final card, an outright bribe of rupees 10,000 for revealing his position in Colgate. If the move backfired, I would lose face not just with him, but with his friends and associates too. I again tried to peep into his soda pad, but by now he was certain that I was prying around for information on his Colgate trades. He held his soda pad close to his chest and shot me a dirty look. The only thing left for me to do was to get back to Bunty and tell him I had been unsuccessful. I knew Bunty would not hold it against me, but I did not want to give up so easily. A stock exchange clerk by the name of Rajesh, with whom I had become friendly of late, travelled most days by the same local as I did after work. I told him about my requirement and promised him money if he could fish out the details. Rajesh promised to do something about it. 2 days later, he got me the details. I suspect he sourced them from one of the officials who was privy to the scribblings on the jobber's soda pads. I paid Rajesh rupees 5,000 for the information. Later that evening, I met Bunty over drinks to give him the information he had asked for. He was very pleased and, in fact, surprised that I had managed to get it for him. But this is going to cost you, Bunty. I had to pay rupees 20,000 to get this piece of information because I had to tap more than one source, I told him after we had downed a couple of pegs. Bunty took a sip of his drink and gave me a knowing smile. I realized he had caught my bluff. No problem, Lala, you shall get the balance, he said, and then added as an afterthought, you are smarter than I thought, you sure will go far. It was more a backhanded compliment than a well-meaning one. But I had formed the first of the many rules I would set for myself over the years. Rule number 1. If you are dealing straight, you will get the same from me. And if you are looking to steal, I will deal with you likewise. Bunty came up with similar requests a few more times, and on each occasion, Rajesh passed on the required information to me. I did make good money on these deals, but my firm gained too as Bunty routed more of his trades through us. There was an auction system on BSE. When a seller failed to deliver shares on settlement day, his position would be auctioned. BSE would put up the details of the undelivered shares on the notice board, and other brokers could tender shares to the clearing house. Offering brokers would quote a premium to the last traded price, and the lowest offer would be accepted by the clearing house. Sometimes when a broker or his client defaulted on a delivery and the market got wind of it, rivals would push up the price of that stock in the market and then offer shares at the auction at a huge premium. The ASPS pair had a near monopoly in this market. The details of the best offers in the auction were not disclosed by the stock exchange. But I learned from my circle of back office friends that ASPS managed to put in the winning quotes most of the time. Whenever a chunky lot of shares came up for auction, I thought over the possible reasons for this. The straightforward reason could be that they had a robust inventory of shares that allowed them to participate in the auctions more often than other brokers. The other likely reason was that AS&PS got information about rival offers from an insider, allowing them to adjust their offers accordingly. I had dealt with ASPS a few times on the floor, and the experience was far from agreeable if not downright unpleasant. Their smugness was annoying, and on a couple of occasions they drove hard bargains, aware that I was trying to get my clients out of a difficult situation. Once, after having been shortchanged in a deal, I made some nasty remarks about them behind their backs. Word of it got to them somehow, but they seemed more delighted by my discomfiture than offended at my choice of words to describe them. One day they approached me just as trading for the day ended. "How was the day, Lala? Made some good money for your clients?" AS greeted me with his usual oily smile. I found it harder to tolerate AS's fake humility than his partner's brusqueness. "Could have been better," I replied, knowing they were getting at something else. "Still sore with us for the way we got the better of you in the last deal?" AS said, trying to rub it in. I felt my temper rising but had to keep it in check. After all, they were powerful players. "You should be a bit more sporting, son. You have a long way to go and lots to learn. More importantly, you should be respectful of your seniors," AS went on, in as patronizing a tone as he could assume. "I have the highest respect for you both. In fact, you both are my role models. I hope to become like you someday," I said with a smile, giving a good as I got. "Arey Lala, you say one thing to our face and something else behind our back. You think we are fuckers about who will go to the extent of selling our own mothers for an extra profit. Isn't that what you are going around telling people about us?" AS said, still smiling. "I think somebody is misinforming you. I don't recollect having said anything like that," I said with a straight face. It was now PS's turn to needle me. "If you said that, be man enough to admit it. Even otherwise, it doesn't matter what you think of us. There are too many amateurs like you who don't know the first thing about trading and go around whining when they are beaten," he said, resting his palm on my shoulder. The tone in which he spoke suggested he would have loved to punch me in the face. I bristled, but tried harder to keep my wits about me. After that incident, I kept away from them as far as possible. The few times we ran into each other in the ring, it was an effort for us to be mutually civil. PS would glower at me and AS would have a mocking grin ready for me. But I could not live down the humiliating exchange I had had with them. And when I heard about the domination ASPS enjoyed in the delivery auction market, I sensed an opportunity to get under their skin. To cut a long story short, I managed to befriend an official in that department using Rajesh's network. The offers for the auction were submitted in a sealed envelope to the concerned department of the stock exchange. I went up to my boss and told him that I had figured out a way for our clients as well as the firm to make good money by tendering shares in the auction. Our clients had been regularly participating in the auction process, but with limited success. I did not tell my boss how I planned to swing things in our favor. All I told him was that it would cost money. He trusted me well now and instructed the accountant to give me up to rupees 10,000 whenever I asked for it. My contact in the department would tip me off about the offers. I was smart enough not to be greedy and draw attention to myself. I would select 2 or 3 stocks that offered us a good chance to make a neat profit and would quote offers accordingly. Twice I quoted 10 paise below offers put in by AS and twice I did that with PS's offers too. On each of these occasions, there was a large chunk of shares involved. My clients and my firm made a killing on those deals while AS and PS were left scratching their heads trying to figure out how they were being undercut and by whom. I must add here that I was quite inspired by the movie Trishul, in which Amitabh Bachchan's construction firm undercuts Sanjeev Kumar's firm's quotation by 1 rupee, leaving the latter fuming. The financial loss hurt ASPS, no doubt, but what galled them even more was the challenge to their dominance. They made some inquiries and figured out who was stealing their lunch. Naturally, they were mad enough to want to kill me. They could not confront me on this matter because the exchange did not publish the successful offers, and they did not want to explain how they found me out either. But they let me know that they were aware of what I was up to. "Hello, Lala," AS greeted me one day as I passed him in the ring. Your clients must be quite happy with you, considering the profits you have helped them earn in Tisco and Century. I was caught unawares, and my surprise showed. I had undercut AS on both these stocks. It had been 10 paise as usual. AS stared at me for a few seconds and then walked off without saying anything more. PS was less subtle when I bumped into him the following day. I tried to avoid him, but he sidled up to me and put his arm around my shoulder as if we were the best of friends. But what he had to say was anything but friendly. I had said this once in the past and I shall repeat it again. Since you seem to have trouble understanding my message, don't mess with your fathers in the industry, Lala. You could get hurt, he said and moved on. As threats went, it could not get more explicit than this. A couple of weeks later, the duo accosted me just as I was about to get into the ring for the day. Sale kutte, you think you are smart, don't you? How the fuck can your firm regularly offer 10 paise below our quotes? AS asked menacingly. I don't know what the hell you are talking about, I said, trying to stay calm. AS and PS looked at each other and AS spoke again. Fucker, try your acting skills somewhere else. BSE has started putting out the winning offers for the auction on the notice board from today. Check it out. And by the way, we know this is not the first time you have done this. Fucker, you watch out. We will make you pay for this dearly. I was at a loss for words, and that left them in no doubt whatsoever about my culpability. Then PS stepped closer to me. Kid, you are from Dombivli, aren't you? I have heard the trains on the route are quite crowded. And then his voice dropped to a whisper and he went on. And people regularly lose their limbs or lives falling off packed trains. This time they had rattled me well and good. I stood rooted there for nearly a minute after the duo had left. My hands were trembling and I instinctively thrust them into my pockets to not let them show. I reflected on what they, especially PS, had said. Perhaps it was a spontaneous outburst, arising from wounded pride at being outsmarted. Yet knowing their uncouth ways, I was worried that they would go to any extent to settle scores. After all, how much would it cost to hire 2 goons to fix me in Dombivli itself, and make it look like a street brawl or a mucking attempt gone awry? I had friends in the market, but none in whom I could confide my inner fears. I had half a mind to complain about the duo to the authorities in the exchange, but I saw little point in doing that since these 2 rogues were quite influential. More worryingly, I could not complain without running the risk of my misdeeds being exposed. There was a real chance they would carry out the threat of causing me physical harm. At the same time, I did not want to give them the impression that I was beaten. So in the following settlement, I undercut them in 2 stocks, but chose those which did not cause either AS and PS a huge loss. I steered clear of the large offers in which they were involved. For the next couple of months, I would take a good look around before boarding or getting off the train. I also made it a point to position myself away from the footboard except while boarding or alighting. AS and PS would try to finger me whenever they could. I had become competent at sourcing decent lots of stocks. So if I bought a certain number of shares of company X on the floor, I knew which broker would be interested in buying that lot and would accordingly strike a deal to sell the shares to him at the earliest. Similarly, if I had sold stock Y, I knew which broker would be looking to sell a similar lot and I would buy it off him to square up my position. AS and PS were curious to know whom I was sourcing shares from or selling to, and asked their lackeys to keep track of me in the ring. Owl, I named him so because of his saucer-shaped eyes, was one such jobber who owed his existence to the duo and was forever ready to carry out their bidding. Most brokers of any significance had hotlines on the trading floor. This helped their office convey clients' orders and also helped other brokers or jobbers reach out to them with a deal. After I struck a large deal, by my standards on the floor, I would call up the concerned broker on his hotline and ask him if he was interested in trading with me. Once Owl and I were competing on the same stock. I bought a sizable chunk at a good price and then called the office of a broker who I knew was interested in that stock. The dealer at that office asked me to call back in 15 minutes while he checked with his boss. When I called back after 15 minutes, the dealer said he was not interested. I found it a bit odd because I knew for certain that the broker had been scouting around for the stock. But I did not give much thought to the incident. When I casually mentioned this to a fellow jobber, he told me that he had seen Owl call on the same hotline shortly after I had made my... It was only then that I realized Owl was keeping tabs on the brokers I was talking to. I am sure he would have passed on the details to his masters, who then offered a better quote to those brokers and snatched the deal from me. I had to be careful the next time, but before that I had decided to have some fun at Owl's expense. I found a chance a couple of days later. I had bought a block of Dr. Reddy's laboratories and knew a broker who would be interested in it. But I did not call the broker straight away. I first picked up a couple of hotlines at random and got the dealers at the other end worked up by talking some arbitrary stuff. Owl could not hear what I was saying but presumed that I was trying to offload the Dr. Reddy's shares to those brokers. I knew that Owl would ring those brokers the moment I hung up on them, but I wanted to know how Owl would react when he realized he had caught up the wrong brokers. By then I had become friendly with a jobber named Prakash, a couple of years older than I, who agreed to eavesdrop on Owl. Sure enough, when I left after my calls, Owl walked up to the hotline, probably relishing the thought of stealing another deal from me. He did not notice Prakash, who was close by, overhearing his end of the conversation. If you are looking to buy Dr. Reddy's, I have a much better rate for you. Oh, not interested? Well, okay, sorry. No, but I thought... Okay, I'm really sorry, said Owl, keeping the receiver down. A similar conversation followed on his next call. It had not occurred to Owl that I had played a trick on him. 2 days later, I did something similar. This time, realization dawned on Owl that I could be misleading him. He must have reported everything to his masters, for soon one more person was assigned to tail me. This time I dialed 4 brokers at random before placing the right call. Owl and the other spy seemed to have had enough of the abuses that came their way from calling the wrong brokers. The ASPS clique left me in a peace after that. Or rather, I thought so, but I was mistaken. Outwardly, their hostility towards me ceased somewhat, and once in a while, even the usually gruff PS would greet me with a smile in the ring. I felt the past was forgiven and forgotten. Little did I know that the duo was patiently waiting for an opportunity to get back at me. And one day I myself gifted them the chance they had been looking for. It was a fairly busy noon when Owl walked up to me inquiring about the rates I was offering for Apollo tires. We had dealt with each other a few times after the hotline snooping affair, and things had gone off smoothly. I had no reason to suspect anything. I quoted my rate. Owl said he wanted to sell 500 shares. I bought them off him. He asked the rate for another 500 and I gave him the same quote. He then said he wanted to sell some more. I instinctively felt Owl was trying to pull a fast one on me. I quoted a lousy rate so that he would walk away, but to my surprise, he sold me another 500 shares and asked for still another quote. I quoted an even lousier rate, increasing the spread sharply so that it looked obvious that I was trying to blatantly overcharge him. I was expecting him to make some scathing remarks and walk away in a huff, but he again surprised me. "Arey Lala, are you trying to kill me by quoting such rates?" he whined. "It is up to you whether you want to take it or not," I said disdainfully. "You have become a big man, Lala, but that does not give you the right to treat small jobbers like me with contempt," he protested. I wanted to walk away, but the fellow wouldn't let me. Even though I had become a bit more tolerant of him lately, I certainly had no love lost for him. "My rate stands, take it or leave it," I said. "The spread you have quoted is so wide that somebody could sell 50,000 shares of Apollo tires at this price," Owl said. By now, I was really annoyed with him and decided to insult him outright so that he would not prolong the decision. 50,000 shares, eh? Well, if you have them on you, sell now. You have a buyer in me, I said, fully aware that Owl did not deal in big quantities. Don't be so arrogant, Lala. I know you don't have the capacity to buy 50,000 shares. And you think you can make fun of me like that? Owl said angrily. I was pleased with myself now that I had managed to get him worked up. Somewhere during our conversation, I recalled how he had managed to snatch at least 2 good deals from me. The memory of those losses made me want to inflict pain on him. You don't worry about whether I have the capacity to buy 50,000 Apollo tires or not. Your concern should be whether you have those many shares to sell, I said smugly. I did not realize he was playing to a plan. Fine, Lala, I accept your offer. Sold to you 50,000 Apollo tires, he said and quickly whipped out his soda pad noting down the deal. I was stumped. It was true that I did not have the capacity to deal in 50,000 shares. While my boss had not specified any position limits, it was understood that I would not take excessive risks. After all, if the jobber defaults on his obligation, the broker has to make up for it. I had taken Owl on because I knew that he did not deal in such large quantities either. Besides, it is common on the floor for traders to talk down each other so as to be able to get a competitive rate. Hey, wait, don't joke with such large quantities, I said, realizing how perilous the situation could become and hoping that Owl was just fooling around. It was now Owl's turn to hurl barbs at me. Why, what happened, big man? Did you just wet your pants at the thought of 50,000 shares? The way you were talking, I felt it was loose change for you, he said, barely trying to conceal his glee. The only way out of this mess was to claim the deal never happened or that Owl had misheard me as having said 50,000 when I had actually said 500. But there were witnesses to our trade. Owl had ensured that. If I backed out of the deal, my reputation would take a knock and others would become less trustful of me. Another option was to grovel before Owl and request him to cancel the trade. But my pride would not allow that, and even if I did plead with him, he would first savor my discomfort and then still refuse me. If I stood by the deal, there was a high probability of my having to take a loss beyond my capacity. Even 1 rupee of loss meant I would be out of pocket by rupees 50,000. I was sure that Owl was fronting for his masters, who seemed determined to force me out of this profession in disgrace. As of now, they had won half the battle. The settlement was about a week away, and even if I did manage to get out of my position in Apollo tires, it was likely to be at a loss. Knowing AS's PS's hatred for me, they would spread the word that I was desperate to offload 50,000 shares of Apollo tires. Anybody looking to buy from me would then try to beat me down on the price. I had nobody to blame for this situation but myself. Later that day, I bumped into AS as I was leaving the ring for my office. I understand you have a big lot of Apollo tires to sell. Can I be of help? He asked with mock seriousness. I tried to ignore him, but PS did not give up so easily. Well, Lala, we warned you enough times not to play around with us, and I had promised you that I would make you pay. I hope you have already thought of an alternative profession for after next week, he said as he went away. My situation appeared to be beyond salvage. I tried to picture various scenarios. The best case scenario would be my making a fat profit on the trade. The chances of that looked next to impossible, especially since my foes would have spread the word that there was a desperate seller hawking 50,000 shares. The next best scenario was to get out of the position at no profit, no loss, but with a lesson learned in humility. The chances of that too appeared slim. A loss of even 1 rupee per share would be painful, but I could still prevail on my boss to keep me in the job and work off my debt. A loss of 2 rupees and I could not be sure of my job. Though I could still plead for leniency, a loss of more than 2 rupees and I would have to look for a job outside the stock market. No broker would be willing to hire me after hearing about my blunder. I wondered if I should ask Bunty to help me out by buying the block for his fund because I had still got it at a competitive price and would gladly have sold it to him at the same price. The problem here was that Bunty's fund did not have any previous exposure to Apollo tires, and Bunty would find it difficult convincing his bosses about his sudden interest in the stock. My boss was out of town and was not expected till 3 days later. That gave me some breathing space. I was not sure how he would react if word about my reckless trade got around to him. He was by nature a rather level-headed person, but just like the stock market, people can be irrational at an inopportune moment. I slept fitfully that night, beset my nightmares of being chased out of the stock market building with just my undergarments on. I had to drag myself to work the following day. I was unsure whether I should be going into the ring at all. With the Apollo trade playing on my mind, I was likely to make more mistakes and aggravate an already bad situation. I thought over it for a while and took a decision. I would try to first trade my way out of Apollo and only then take other deals. I tried a bit of self-motivation so that I did not betray my desperation and make myself vulnerable to more bad deals. Maybe this was a test by God to make me a better professional, I thought as I walked into the ring. I inquired about the rates for Apollo tires. To my dismay, the prices on offer were low, and so were the volumes. I tried buying some other stocks, but my mind kept going back to Apollo. I again checked the rates, but they were still not in my favor. I decided to hold on to my position for one more day before making up my mind. With 10 minutes left for the day's session to end, Sharma casually came up to me. We knew each other by face but had not interacted before. The outspoken and jovial Sharma was known to be part of Harshad Mehta's inner circle. I was a bit surprised when he approached me, considering we had never spoken before. "How goes things, Lala?" he asked. "Surviving," I said, forcing a smile. We all are, in one way or another," he said, eyeing me closely. "To what do I owe the honor of you accosting me?" I wanted to ask him. We sized each other up for a few seconds, then Sharma spoke. "I would like to buy some stocks of you." I immediately realized he knew about my Apollo tires trade. No client ever reveals his hand before asking for a quote. "Which one?" I asked, knowing the answer fully well. "Come off it, Lala. You know which one, else I would have asked for a quote first," he said. "Since you know where I stand, it goes without saying that you already have a price in mind," I said, trying to sound dignified. "You are right. Let's deal straight. What did you buy it for?" he asked. I told him the right price and aware that he knew it. "Okay, I will buy it from you at 10 paise below your cost price," he said. "That's generous on your part, knowing the situation I am in," I said, and then wondered if I had given myself away. "Let me put it this way. Some people would like to see you in trouble, and we would like to deny them that satisfaction. Besides, we are buyers in the stock, if the price is reasonable," Sharma said. "Who is the we?" I asked, just to confirm my conclusion about who could be behind this gift from heaven. "Too clever by half, aren't you, Lala? I take it that you are sufficiently informed about who I work for," Sharma said. "Even if it is unintended generosity, why not go the whole way and buy my position at cost? So that you realize there is a cost to stupidity. 10 paise is no big deal, but if you are let off the hook clean, you could get into bigger trouble next time," Sharma said, noting down the deal in his soda pad. "Am I supposed to be grateful for this act of kindness?" I asked. "Well, that's up to you," Sharma said, walking away. The following day, Owl approached me, saying he was willing to buy back the Apollo tires position at 3 rupees below my selling price. "We all make mistakes, Lala, but I don't want somebody to be out of a job because of his immaturity," Owl said, perhaps hoping that I would beg him for a better price. "That's very magnanimous of you," I said, and leaning forward whispered into his ear where he could shove up that offer. But for ASPS themselves, having made a formidable enemy in my unlikely benefactor, I would have been in serious trouble. The loss of rupees 5,000 pinched for about a month, but I kept telling myself that things could have been much worse.